Great Tribulation is a terrible period of suffering mentioned in the Bible. This period will occur in the final moments of history. Virtually all Christians agree that there will be the Great Tribulation, although they disagree with their chronology and purpose. Today, only a few Christians understand that there will be no great final tribulation. Usually they adopt a more pretentious interpretation of biblical texts that talk about the Great Tribulation. These Christians are more common within an eschatological position called postmillennialism. Many biblical passages speak of a great future tribulation. Among them, the best known is the one in which Jesus spoke about the Great Tribulation in his eschatological sermon. The Apostle Paul also referred to the period of Great Tribulation in his epistles. The book of Revelation, in several passages, talks about it. In a very difficult passage, many scholars also agree that the prophet Daniel prophesied about the Great Tribulation. The big question is, when will the Great Tribulation occur? The Bible does not set a date about when the Great Tribulation will happen. She only informs us that it will be in the final moments of the present era. It is also said that the Great Tribulation is preceded by the principle of pain, a period that covers from the 1st century to the days they culminate in the final days of tribulation. But there really is a lot of discussion about this chronological issue. Because of the difficulty of interpreting biblical texts on the events of the end time, Christians have taken on different positions. Basically, there are 3 interpretations about the chronology of the Great Tribulation. There are those Christians who argue that the Great Tribulation will begin after the rapture of the church. They divide Christ's return into 2 stages. The first will be in a secret rapture to seek the church, and the second will be visible and in glory to rid Israel and the converts of the Great Tribulation. This period, according to them, will last 7 years. According to this interpretation, the church will not go through the Great Tribulation. This interpretation is called pre-tribulationism and is the latest interpretation within historical Christianity. It began to be officially taught only after the 19th century. Today, it represents the thinking of most Christians. There are also those who understand that the Great Tribulation will happen before the coming of Christ, with the church still on earth. This interpretation is called post-tribulationism. It is the most traditional interpretation within historical Christianity. Before the 19th century, the overwhelming majority of Christians were post-tribulationists. Currently, this position grew again. Finally, there are also Christians who understand that the Great Tribulation will begin before the coming of Christ, but that the rapture will happen in the midst of it. This interpretation is called midi-tribulationism or mesotributionism. It represents the minority among Christians. But how will the Great Tribulation be? This question the Bible answers clearly. Jesus warned that the Great Tribulation will be as a period of suffering as great as it has never been seen since the beginning of the world. He also said that if these troubled days were not abbreviated, no one would escape. But it also stated that because of the chosen ones, the days of Great Tribulation will be abbreviated. Hence, we can understand that the Great Tribulation will be very intense, but also relatively short. The Apostle Paul also wrote that the Great Tribulation will be a period of great apostasy. The same said the Apostle Peter. He stated that the days before Christ's second coming will be marked by unbelieving people who will mock the word of God. This kind of behavior has always existed, but will intensify in the final period. Something characteristic in the Great Tribulation will be the appearance of the eschatological Antichrist. Many Antichrists have emerged throughout the history. In the 1st century, Christians recognized the Roman Empire as an Antichrist system. This empire was violent and oppressive, and led by emperors who called themselves gods. But in the Great Tribulation, there will be an even worse system. This evil system will be conducted by the final Antichrist, the worst of them all. He is called the man of sin, the son of perdition and abominable of desolation. It is also worth knowing that some of the texts that talk about the Great Tribulation record what we call double reference prophecies. This means that they describe prophecies that find their full fulfillment on different occasions. For example, Jesus in his prophetic sermon spoke about the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, but at the same time, he also spoke of the Great Tribulation. This means that the destruction of Jerusalem typified the Great Tribulation. We can also discuss the nature of the Great Tribulation. We have seen that Christians assume different interpretations of the chronology of the Great Tribulation. Because of this, they of course also have different opinions about their nature. Those who believe that the church will not go through the Great Tribulation understand that it will be the period in which God will punish the wicked world. For them, the Great Tribulation will be the spill of God's wrath over the impenitent world. During this period, there will also be a direct treatment from God to Israel. Those who believe that the church will go through the Great Tribulation understand that it will be the period in which the wicked world led by Satan will fiercely persecute the church. The church suffers persecution in all its history, but in the final period before Christ's return, such persecutions will intensify. It is in this scenario that Christ will return in glory and power to abbreviate the difficult days and to rid his people. Who defends this interpretation believes that God punishes the world, pouring his wrath on unbelievers, especially in response to the prayers of the church, but also states that the wrath of God will be completely consummated on the day of judgment, in which it will occur at the time of the second coming of Christ. Regardless of the position adopted, the most important thing is to understand that God takes care of his people. Some people are terrified of the possibility of the church going through the great crew, but if she has to pass, we should be comforted in the truth that God will keep her, and she will endure to the end. Every evil persecuting system will one day fall before the majestic coming of Christ, and the church will rise glorious to meet with its groom.
In a world full of cuts, short videos, and distractions, you chose to stay and listen until the end. That already says a lot about your willingness to look deeper. Drop your city in the comments, and if you'd like, subscribe and share this video with someone who's also not afraid to think. Thank you, a big hug to you, and see you in the next video.